Total Drama Island is what started it all. This show made in response to the rise of popularity of reality TV shows at the time, and while it definitely was a unique show at the time, it wasn't the first show to attempt this. Drawn Together aired 3 years prior to Total Drama Island. While Drawn Together was based on Big Brother, Total Drama Island was inspired by shows like Survivor. The series focused on 22 teens who were shipped out to Camp Wawanakwa in order to compete for $1 million. Every episode had the contestants compete in challenges, which the losing team would send one of their teammates off the island. One of Total Drama's strong suits is how it handles the characters. Obviously, with there being 22 contestants, they would all start out as bare-bones caricatures. But as the series progressed, their personalities become more fleshed out. The early episodes of the show focused on developing the contestants, which really paid off, as you would become more attached to the characters as the series progressed. Despite it being a cartoon, it made you invest in the characters and the outcome of each challenge. I remember watching the show when it first aired, and I was either cheering on Owen or Harold to win. I remember some of the campfire eliminations giving me heart attacks because there were characters that I didn't want to get booted off the show. And at times, I felt an honest confliction when I saw the eliminations come down to two characters who I really wanted to stay in the show. What really helps the investment in the characters is how the show balances its cartoony nature and its weighted world. Even though the show's a cartoon, they did their best to make the show feel like it was down to earth. Most of the challenges in the show were realistic, such as a game of dodgeball, a paintball hunt, or a game of hide and seek. These challenges, in turn, made the contestants feel more down to earth as well, and it made it easy to be invested in their attempts to win. Meanwhile, the show also uses the fact that it's a cartoon to its advantage. While the show tried being down to earth, it would often exaggerate its scenarios. This was mainly used for comedy or to make some of the challenges more entertaining, but it never got to the point that the immersion of the show was broken. It was a perfect balance, and it showed that the creators of the show had a lot of passion for it. They went above and beyond to translate a reality TV show concept into a cartoon, and they didn't let the fact that it's a kids show get in the way of that. By far, one of the most surprising, yet welcomed, aspects of the show is its more teen nature. The show featured censored nudity, profanity, and censored language. Those were all intended to be censored as a parallel to those being present in other reality TV shows, which means that hardly anything had to be cut worldwide. Though, even some aspects of the show were altered worldwide. You might expect Total Drama Island to be a product of its time, but so much love and passion went into it that it still holds up amazingly today. Watching it now after all these years had made me appreciate this show even more. Or more specifically, this season. Total Drama Island will be placed on the highest of pedestals. Total Drama Action is the second season of the Total Drama series, and honestly, it's as good as a continuation as it could get. This season sees all of the contestants from the first series return, with the show taking place in a new area. Instead of taking place on an island, the show now takes place in a movie studio, with the contestants now competing in challenges based on movie genres. One of the best aspects of this series is the creative setup. This alone expands the possibilities of what scenarios the contestants could be put through, and each is more entertaining than the last. With the more creative setup, this season also amps up its more cartoony side. The first challenge alone has the contestants racing through a city as they try to avoid a giant animatronic monster. Though it still keeps its more down-to-earth elements, so everything has a nice balance to it. One of the more mixed bags about this season is the characters. Since the first season spent so much time fleshing out the contestants, this season gets to skip all of those slow episodes from the first half of season 1. And while some may consider that a good thing, it also causes the characters of this season to be less interesting. We already know who these characters are, and we've seen them spend an entire season interacting with each other, so this season doesn't really offer anything new for the characters. Some contestants do get new story arcs this season, but they feel like forced attempts to spice up the characters. They don't feel as natural as Season 1 did, which makes you lose the investment in who will win this season. It's a very entertaining season with a very creative setup. Beyond that, there just isn't much to say about this season. It's almost set up exactly like the first one, just change everything to be movie set themed. Even the elimination ceremony is just reskinned as an award show. Despite that, though, it's still a very solid continuation of the first season. Those who didn't like the slow, down-to-earth tone in Season 1 will be much more pleased with this one. Though, I am one of those people who enjoyed Season 1's style, and for that, Total Drama Action will be placed on the 3rd place pedestal. Total Drama World Tour is the 3rd season of the Total Drama series, and it's the last season featuring the traditional cast. Though some characters didn't make it back this season. Though I should clarify that some of the contestants here do return in later seasons, but this is the last season focusing primarily on the contestants from the first 2 seasons. This time around, instead of having the entire season take place in one location, the show now focuses on the contestants traveling around the world. They now participate in challenges themed around the part of the world they're in, and just like before, those who fail the challenges will face elimination. In a lot of ways, this season tone feels just like Total Drama Action, though they're trying to add in new elements to spice it up. After 2 seasons, we finally get 2 new characters, and for the most part, they do a pretty good job at shaking up the dynamic of the cast. Like in Total Drama Action, they try giving some characters new character arcs, but most of them feel rather forced. Though there are some good improvements, like the character Cody, who gets some decent attention in Season 1, but has almost no importance in Season 2. There is a plot point of a contestant who snuck in back of the airplane and has been hiding in the luggage compartment. And over the course of the season, he turns into this weird gremlin. It's a weird change, but these changes here feel so much better than in Total Drama Action. Speaking of weird changes, one new addition to this season is musical numbers being added in the middle of each episode. This change doesn't really have a purpose, and to be honest, I wasn't a fan. The musical numbers aren't that great, with only 1 or 2 exceptions, but they break any immersion you would have had with this season. Overall, it feels like a slight downgrade from Season 2. Even the challenges from this season feel rather lackluster compared to the previous seasons. Most of the challenges in this season are themed around the contestants racing each other across the country they're in. And some challenges differ from this, but none of the challenges had the character interaction from the first 2 seasons. This season does make some good changes, but it also makes just as many bad ones. For those who prefer Total Drama Action over the first season, you'll have a fun time with this one. But for me, this feels like the lowest point in the trilogy. It's still a fun season to watch, don't get me wrong, but I just wasn't as invested in it as I was for the other seasons. And for that, Total Drama World Tour will be placed on the 4th pedestal. Total Drama Return to the Island is the 4th season of the show, and despite its name, hardly anything remains the same. This season features an entirely new cast of characters, with only the showrunners Chris and Chef returning. This season makes a return to the island from the first season, however, everything's changed, as now the island is a toxic waste dump. It was at this point in the series where any and all down-to-earth elements have been dropped from the first few seasons. They have completely embraced the cartoony nature of the show, which in a lot of ways is bad. For starters, the contestants in this series are all bland. They get very bare-bones personalities to start with, and they never even develop. Though there is one exception, but we'll get to that later. As for the rest of the characters, they are nothing more than their one personality trait. I feel a big reason for this problem stems from the fact that the team writing the show spent 2 full seasons not needing to fully develop characters. After Season 1 of Total Drama Island, the cast of the show were already defined enough. And besides some minor character arcs, they didn't need to spend a few episodes with slow challenges to build them up. But now that the show has an entirely new cast of characters, that same mentality just doesn't work. Speaking of challenges, the first 3 seasons had reasonable challenges that sometimes used its more cartoony nature to make them more interesting. This time around, the show tosses out any reasonable challenges and just comes up with torture traps that only cartoon characters could survive. Any investment you might have had for these characters winning their challenges is just out the window, as there's no real stakes to them. In Season 1, the character Cody gets attacked by a bear in the woods, and then gets wounded to the point that he had to be eliminated from the show as he could no longer compete. In this season, however, there is absolutely no real danger in any of these challenges, with the exception of one of the contestants coming in contact with the radiation and then turning into a giant mutant girl. Weird. But that just kind of goes to show how little the showrunners cared about making a down-to-earth world at this point. Any tension, surprise, or investment is just gone from this season, and I would even consider this season to be one of the lowest points in the series, if not for 2 characters, Cameron and Lightning. These 2 characters in the show are the only characters I feel that they had some natural character development on par with Season 1 of Total Drama. Lightning is just a jock character who only cares about winning. But as the season progresses, we see why Lightning is so determined to win, beyond the $1 million prize, of course. Lightning has a lot more riding on this competition than the prize itself. I won't spoil anything here for those who have yet to see this season and plan on checking it out, but Lightning is the only character in this season who has a reason to win beyond the prize money. Cameron, on the other hand, is a bubble boy. He signed up for the contest so that the $1 million could help keep up his lifestyle. And like with Lightning, I won't spoil Cameron's development, but all I can say is that Cameron and Lightning are the only two redeeming characters in this season. Despite them, they alone can't save what an awful season this is. And the sad part, this isn't even the lowest point of the series. So with that said, Total Drama Return to the Island will be placed on the 5th pedestal. The 5th season of the Total Drama series is split up in between two halves, both of which are their own mini-seasons. And the first half of the 5th season is called Total Drama All-Stars. This season sees a return of popular characters from all 4 seasons, entering once again for that $1 million prize. And God, where do I even start? The characters are just frankly terrible. Anything you loved about the characters from the first season are gone, and somehow the returning characters from season 4 got even worse. There's nothing natural about the characters in this season. Their character arcs are terrible, and their interactions are even forced, just like this voice right now. There's no surprise element this season, and it's obvious what characters will be eliminated from the moment the episodes even begin. The challenges are no longer any fun to watch now, and even season 4, which had more cartoony challenges, still at least had some that were fun to watch. Meanwhile, this season has no redeemable qualities worth getting invested in anything it had to offer. This season does everything so poorly, so incompetently, that you wonder how the heck the first seasons were even as good as they were. But by far, the biggest insult this season is its name, Total Drama All-Stars. This season was meant to bring in fan favorites from the series after one bad season. This could have easily been a return to form for the series, to bring back what was so great about the first season. But no, instead they just took elements from season 4 and made them horrifically worse. I can't exaggerate how unwatchable the season is. There is absolutely no reason to even watch this season. Even season 4 had some elements that made it watchable, but God, this season is just worthless. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I have to hammer this point. Okay, I don't want to take up any more time spouting just how awful this season is, so let's just end it with Total Drama All-Stars being placed on the lowest pedestal. Total Drama Pahkitew Island is the second half of Season 5 of the Total Drama series. This season focuses on another brand new cast of characters, a brand new island, but the same $1 million. Even with how bad Total Drama All-Stars was, somehow Pahkitew Island is the black sheep of the series. Even the most die-hard Total Drama fans forget this season even exists, and it's no wonder why. The characters this season have one-note personalities, just like Season 4, yet they are very bland. Before looking back over the show for this review, I could hardly remember any of the characters, and I can only remember one of them as they show up as a contestant in the 6th season. There's really nothing that stands out about this particular season. The only sort of unique aspect is that the island they're on this season is completely mechanical, allowing for the showrunner Chris to control certain aspects about it, like the weather and whatnot. But even that aspect was lacking in creativity. And another reason for this season not leaving any impact at all is due to how fast it went by. Like I said before, Season 5 of the Total Drama series was split in half to produce 2 separate seasons, meaning both All-Stars and Pahkitew Island only had 12 episodes to work with. While All-Stars is memorable for everything it does so wrong, this season just doesn't have anything worth remembering. I can't say this season is particularly bad, especially not compared to the previous 2 seasons. It's just so forgettable. In a way, I think this season may be better than Season 4, especially since it's a much shorter season. But at the very least, Return to the Island is memorable, and it has some qualities worth praising. So with that said, I'm putting Total Drama Pahkitew Island on the 6th pedestal. Total Drama The Ridonculous Race, the 6th and final Total Drama season. If you've been keeping up with the Total Drama week listing so far, then you'll notice that the only pedestal left open is the 2nd place pedestal. And we'll get to why that spot has been left open for this particular series. But first, it's worth mentioning that this isn't technically a part of the Total Drama seasons. The Ridonculous Race is a spin-off show that takes place in the world of Total Drama, and it even features the 4 returning characters, including one from the very forgotten Pahkitew Island season. I'll start off by saying that I had absolutely no expectations for this series. Total Drama Return to the Island was a complete and utter disappointment. Total Drama All-Stars was terrible beyond belief, and Total Drama Pahkitew Island was bland and forgettable. For years, the series dropping significantly in quality, so when the Ridonculous Race was announced, I had no hope for it. Against my better judgment, I decided to watch the first few episodes, and thankfully I did, as this season completely blew me away. Granted, that was due to the absurdly low expectations I had for it, but this season felt like the return to form I had been wanting for so long. This season introduces 32 brand new contestants, a new setup, and a brand new host. There's also the 4 returning characters, but we'll get to them later. The show is centered around 8 teams of 2 pairs, who have to race across through a variety of locations across the world, with those who finish last in each location being eliminated. The premise of this season is very similar to World Tour, especially since World Tour had a ton of race-themed challenges. However, I find the challenges in the Ridonculous Race to be better implemented since it's 18 teams of 2 racing to the goal and not 2 teams of around 10 people. The reason this matters is that where the Ridonculous Race shines, where past seasons have failed, is in its characters. The new characters aren't as good as the Season 1 contestants, but the characters are developed here far better than they have been since Season 2 and onward. Thanks to the smaller teams, we get a nice focus on just about every pairing. And while they do start out as bare, basic characters, as the teams shrink down, the remaining characters get more developed. And even though there aren't any slow-moving character-building episodes like Season 1 had, they still managed to find a nice balance in this season. Bear with me. The biggest proof of this is with the return of previous characters, one of which is Noah, who had almost no impact at all during the first 3 seasons. He was a loner character who didn't like working with others, so he'd always been kicked from the show very easily. This time around, he gets paired up with a series veteran, Owen, and both of them make a pretty decent team actually. For the first time in the series, we get to see Noah actually get invested in the show he's in, and we get to see his character evolve as the show progresses. The second veteran to note is Jeff, a character that has had a weird character arc through the series. Ever since Season 2 of the show, Jeff had been running a sideshow commenting on the other seasons, and in that show, he's progressively become more and more of a jerk, with his personality being almost completely unrecognizable from when he was in Season 1. And starting with this season, Jeff reverts back to his fun-loving character from Season 1, which is far for the better. I will say, this is the first Total Drama season since the first 2 that had me actually invested in who was going to win. My vote was for the Goth team, which I was really rooting for them to win. The only 2 characters that I couldn't stand in the show was the buddy cop duo. I hated them, and I was begging since episode 1 for them to be kicked off the show. And though since Cameron and Lightning didn't make me favorite Season 4 and higher than I did, I won't let these 2 characters make me love this season any less. One problem that people had when this show was announced was the showrunner Chris being replaced. Chris was one of the best parts of previous seasons, though the new showrunner this season isn't too bad. While he doesn't interact with the contestants as much as Chris did, he does have some good moments. Though, for most of the show, he just kind of keeps to himself, which isn't entirely a bad thing. He isn't great, but he just isn't bad either. Honestly, overall, I believe that this season is one of the best that Total Drama has put out in a while. While you can argue that the characters not being as good as the original trilogy seasons, I feel that this season is written so much better than previous seasons. And for that reason alone, I will gladly be placing Total Drama Presents the Ridonculous Race on the second podium. And with that, Total Drama Week comes to a grand end. It has been fun looking back at these shows, and I know I missed one very special show in the series, but I'm not counting that as canon season of the Total Drama series, so if you want me to review that show, you can always show some support by subscribing and let me know in the comments below. Your support is always appreciated, and I hope you enjoyed Total Drama Week. These 3 years making reviews for you has honestly been really great, and I welcome any newcomers with open arms. So be sure to stay tuned for more reviews in the future, and I'll see you guys in the next video!